So now we're going to walk through a medium level environment diagram. It is pretty challenging, so I encourage you to pause the video right here and try out the problem yourself first before you walk through the solution. Assuming that you've paused the video and tried out the problem yourself, I'm now going to walk through the solution. And even though you might have gotten the right answer, or if you think you've gotten the right answer, I encourage you to watch this part because I will be walking through certain techniques I use whilst tracing an environment diagram on midterms. It just helps me not make silly mistakes. Alright, so we start off on line 2 and we need to open up our global frame. So we have global, and on line 2 we have this variable UFO, and the value of that is 1. On the next line we have alien, the value of that is 3. And then we have this function outer, so I have a variable outer, and that's func outer. So the intrinsic name of this function is outer, right? That's the name given here, so I write that down. So func outer, and space is one of its parameters, and alien is another parameter of this function. The parent of this function is global because that is where we first saw the function when we recorded it in our environment diagram. So parent is global. All right. So since this is just a function definition and not a function call, we do not go into this indented part. So we skip the indented part and we come to the unindented portion, or the portion with the same indentation, and that's on line 11. And on line 11, we first look at this part. So we first look at the thing on the right hand side of the equal to sign. And we first see this variable outer. So we're still in our global frame and we're still searching for the variable outer. And we find it over here. So this is outer. And we see that outer points to this function outer. All right, which takes in parameters space and alien. So I've evaluated the operator. Now these are the operands of the statement. So the first operand is a primitive. So this is an integer 2, which evaluates to itself. So I've evaluated this first operand. And then move on to the second operand, which is this whole thing. So this looks super confusing, but all that it really is just a lambda expression. And this is the head of the lambda expression, and this is the body or the return value of the lambda expression. And an easy way to see that is that everything on the left hand side of the colon is the function head, and everything to the right hand side is the return value. So this whole thing is the return value of the first lambda. On exams, I like writing down subscripts for the lambda expressions because it helps me keep track of them. So I would write lambda 1 over here and lambda 2 over here in pencil maybe. And on my environment diagram, I will be using these subscripts. I feel like it helps me trace the code easily and saves a bit of time because I don't make silly mistakes if I do that. Yeah, so this lambda is our second input, or the second operand. Now that we've evaluated both the operator and the operand, we apply the operator onto the operand. So we basically call the function which outer points to. So outer points to this function outer. So we call the function outer and pass in these parameters. So the first parameter is space, which is 2. Okay, so I need to open up a new frame because that's the first thing you do when you have a function call. So I'll have frame 1, and I use the intrinsic name of the function, so that's outer. So f1 is outer, and my first parameter is space. Oh, of course my parent is global. here. So my first parameter is space, and space is 2 from line 11. And we also have alien as another parameter. We are basically passing in this lambda expression for the value of alien. So alien is going to point to func lambda, and it's basically the first lambda. Okay, so remember I've written out lambda sub 1. So I would write lambda sub 1, and the line number of this lambda is line 11. And the parent of this lambda expression, this is a little tricky, but remember the first time we saw the lambda expression was not actually in frame 1 itself, but we were in the global frame when we first evaluated the second operand. So we were here on this line in the global frame and not somewhere here, right? We were not inside frame 1. So when we look for the parent of this lambda expression, it'll be the frame we saw the lambda expression in the first time, which is the global frame. So the parent of this is the global frame. Okay. Next, we finished going through these parameters, space and alien. So we move on to line 5 since we've called the function outer. And we have this variable inner, which points to a function object, which is just called inner itself. Yeah, so we have inner, and a parameter of inner is UFO. Also, one more thing that I forgot to write down is this lambda expression has no parameters. So what we do is we just have 2 open parentheses right next to lambda 1. Okay, so moving back to line 5, which is what we were writing down. So that's inner, UFO. Okay, so the parent of the inner function is f1, because we're in f1 when we see the inner function, or when we're defining the inner function. So that's the parent. And after we define the inner function, we've not called the function yet. So we don't go into this indented part, but instead we go to the part which is along the same indentation. So that's on line 9. We have this return inner statement. So we have the return value of this outer function, and it says we're returning inner. So I need to look for the value of inner in my current frame, f1. So I look through my frame and I see that inner points to this function, inner. So my return value will just copy this arrow essentially over here. And this arrow has the starting point over here and the end point to this function object, right? So this is what it's going to look like. And since we already have gotten the return value, we could just put a tick mark over here, which indicates that we've already found the return value for this frame. This tick mark is not compulsory on exams. You do not have to put it, but it's something I put down. Yeah, so this tick mark just lets me know that I've finished going through this whole frame, and it prevents me from making silly mistakes. So I finished frame 1, and I returned this value inner. So we were on line 11, and we've evaluated this whole expression right now. And this whole expression just returned the value func inner UFO with parent f1. And that value is assigned to the variable planet in the global frame. So I write out planet over here, and I draw a pointer to this. I then finish line 11 and move on to line 13. And line 13, so I evaluate the right hand side of the equal to expression, and I have planet. So I'm currently in the global frame. So I look for the variable planet in the global frame and I find it here. It basically points to the function inner with parent f1. And since I've evaluated the operator, I then move on to the operands, which is just this input into the function. So I look at 1 first. 1 is a primitive So I've evaluated it. Then I see this plus sign, and I then see UFO. So I need to look at the value of UFO in my current frame. So I look through global and I search for UFO, and I find it over here. So UFO is the value 1. So now I calculate 1 plus 1, which is 2. And since I've calculated or evaluated the operand, I now apply the function. And the function here is inner, because planet points to the function inner. So I apply inner onto my operand, which is 2. So I need to basically have a function call, which is inner of 2. So I open up a new frame since it's a function call. This is f2, and the function, the intrinsic name of the function is just what's written over here, and that intrinsic name is inner. It takes in a parameter UFO, and the parent of inner is f1. Okay, so UFO, the value of UFO being passed in is just what we calculated over here, so this whole thing, and we evaluated that, which resulted in the value 2. So the value 2 is passed in to this function, so UFO in this frame is 2. We then move on to the next line, and so on line 6 we have the statement if alien. So what is alien? We're currently in frame f2, so we look in frame f2 for the value of alien. We do not find the value of alien here. There's no variable alien in frame f2. So we look at the parent frame for f2 in order to find the value of alien. And the parent frame is f1. So we go to f1 and we look through this. Okay, so we found our value of alien over here, and we see that alien is a lambda expression. Now remember the set of falsy values that we learned in discussion. Some falsy values are the value false, an empty string, none, and even an empty list. If you don't know what a list is yet, don't worry, we'll get to it later in discussion. But yeah, those are the falsy values we saw. And I mentioned that everything except for those falsy values are truthy values. So if you go back to the list, I think the list is on the discussion 1 slide for my section. You'll realize that all functions are actually truthy values. So this is the function itself, not the return value of the function, but the actual function. It's like this whole thing is a truthy value. This whole thing is a truthy value. All right, so functions are truthy values. So alien is actually a truthy value. So this if statement is true. Thus we go inside the indented part and we look at this line, so line 7. And it's a return statement. So we're going to have return value for frame 2. And then we have this whole thing over here, which looks super tricky. So you can break this down. We first evaluate from the left to the right, and we see this variable alien. And we can't find alien in frame f2, so we go to frame f1, which is the parent frame of inner. And we see that alien points to this lambda expression. So we know what alien is. We then evaluate the operands of this function. And we see that the inputs into this function are basically nothing, because there are no inputs into this function. But this whole alien and the open parentheses and close parentheses, that whole thing is a function call. Since it's a function call, we can open up a new frame. But what about this thing at the side of alien and these two parentheses? What we're going to do is first evaluate this thing because it's a function call. And after we get the return value of this, we then use this part. So I'm going to try evaluating this highlighted portion. So a function call to alien, and alien is this lambda expression. So we're basically opening up a frame for this lambda 1. So I'm going to have frame f3. and it's lambda 1 over here, um, lambda 1, and the parent is global. I'm just copying it from here, right? The function signature. Okay. There are no arguments being passed into this function, which is fine because our lambda does not take in any arguments. There are no parameters for the first lambda. So we've called the function. Now we look at the return value, which is everything to the right hand side of the colon. So the return value is that whole thing, which is just another lambda expression. Yeah. So I just write return value. I write RV for short. It saves time. And the return value is a lambda expression. So I'll have a pointer to func lambda 2. So remember over here I wrote lambda sub 2. So I'm just going to copy that sub 2 over here. And this is on line 11. And the parent of this is our current frame, which is F3. So F3. Great. So we've basically found out the return value for this frame. Also, don't forget to write the parentheses with the parameters over here. So I need to put a parentheses and a over here. So if I write that out neatly, it would look like something like this. Yeah. So lambda sub 2 of a on 911, and this is its parent. So I've calculated the return value for this frame. So once again, something that I like to do is put a tick mark here. You don't have to put the tick mark there, but I think it helps me keep track of what I'm doing. So I've returned the value of that frame, but I realize F2 doesn't have a tick mark yet, which means I didn't finish executing this whole frame. So I come back to this F2 frame just because it didn't have the tick mark. And I realize, oh wait, I didn't finish executing it because I had this UFO variable which I was supposed to pass in to the return value of the call to alien, right? Yes, that's why the tick marks are super helpful in my opinion. So now I know I need to use this value of UFO. So we know that this alien, the function call of alien returned lambda 2 with parent f3. And now I'm going to be passing in this UFO variable into this thing. So you can think about alien with the two parentheses as just the return value, which we got from f3, which is just this whole thing. And I could actually rewrite this like that. This was the return value of the function call to alien, or to the first lambda. And this would actually evaluate to the same thing. So what we want to do is just pass in this UFO into this A, which is the same thing as this A, right? Essentially. But of course, what's given in the code is just alien open parentheses UFO. So I just need to put in this UFO into the return value of this. So this was the return value like we saw earlier. So I need to open up a new frame because we have a function call, right? We have a lambda and we're passing in this UFO into this lambda expression. So I have frame F4. And we have lambda 2 with parent. So the parent of lambda 2 over here is frame F3. So we just copy that down, and we have a parameter A, and A is just whatever UFO is in frame F2, because that's where we were when we saw the UFO variable. So we search frame F2 for the value of UFO, and we find out that it is 2. So I just write 2 over here, and then I need to calculate this return value, which is whatever comes after this colon for lambda 2. So the return value is A. Okay, I need to find the value of A in this current frame. So frame F4, I see the return value uses A, and A in frame F4 is 2. And then there's this plus sign, and then we have alien. So for alien, I look for the value of alien in frame F4, but I can't find it here. So I go to the parent frame, which is F3. Once again, I look for the value of alien in frame F3, but I can't find it. So I go to the parent of frame F3, which is global. So when I go to global, and I look for the value of alien, which is 3, right? So I copy down that value into this frame, and I know alien is 3. So now I have to calculate 2 plus 3, which is 5, and that happens to be my return value. So I return the value 5. I put a tick mark on this frame. Since I know I've already returned the value, I'm done with this frame. And I scroll up, but I see, oh wait, I forgot to put a tick mark here, or I didn't put a tick mark here, which means something is not complete in frame F2. And that means, yeah, I forgot to do something in frame F2, and that was return this whole thing. So on line 7, I'm supposed to return the value of this whole expression, and we just found out that that value is 5. So my return value will be 5, and I put a tick mark here because I've returned the value of this frame. I'm done with this frame. I scroll up, I see that frame 1 has a tick mark, so that means that is fine. And then I'm back in the global frame, but that doesn't have a tick mark here yet. So I know I'm missing something. I was on line 13 when I was executing this, and we found out that the value of this call, so planet open parentheses 1 plus UFO, just evaluated out to 5, right? So now outer equals this whole thing, which is 5. So outer is 5. So we need to include the variable outer in the global frame if it's not already there, and to assign the variable to the value 5. But we see that outer already exists in the global frame, so we just need to change the value of outer. So I'm going to remove this pointer and just change the value of outer. In this case, I can actually just erase this part too. So I can erase this function object, the thing in red. I can just erase it. But I might not always be able to do that. So sometimes I might have a variable in the global frame or another frame which points to this function outer. So for example, let's say I had a variable m in the global frame which had pointed to this function outer, and outer also at a point pointed to the function outer. In this case, when I'm changing the value of outer, I have to remove only this pointer and not this whole thing. The reason for that is because we still have another variable which points to this function outer. So if we remove this value outer, this variable will point to nothing. So m points to nothing right now, which is incorrect, right? So we can't remove this function object entirely if another variable is pointing to it, okay? Yeah, so for now, since we don't actually have this variable m in our code and no other function is pointing to function outer, or no other variable is pointing to function outer, we can just remove this whole thing. And we've finished line 13, and we've finished going through the whole code, so I can put tick mark right there. All my frames have tick marks, which means I know I'm done, and this is the whole environment diagram. I'll just play it out on Python Tutor just so that you see it. Yeah, this is the whole environment diagram. Great, so that was it. Do try it out again if you need to. It's a bit tricky, but very in scope for midterms and finals. Yeah, thanks for watching.